Welcome to the channel. Now, did you know that the least expensive areas to live in the United States are Mississippi, Oklahoma, and Kansas? But if you're watching this video, those spots are probably not on your radar. Today, I'm going to share with you my comprehensive guide to the cost of living here in Austin, Texas. I'll dive into various aspects of living expenses that we all encounter on a daily basis, including items like groceries, housing, utilities, and so much more. Let's go ahead and jump right in. Before we talk more about the cost of housing in Austin, because I know that's incredibly important, I do want to paint a picture for you of what you can expect in terms of your daily necessities and those associated costs. So we're going to start with grocery expenses since ultimately we all need to eat. In Austin, our grocery prices are actually 12% lower than the national average, which really contributes to a more cost-effective shopping experience and helps manage those overall cost of living expenses, especially with the day-to-day necessities. Now, I always like to point out we have a fantastic local grocery store chain called H-E-B. It's certainly a fan favorite amongst Austinites and offers a really wide range of affordability and high-quality products as well. So again, it's a go-to destination for many locals and Austin residents. All right, as we make our way towards housing costs, the bulk of people's living expenses, let's talk more about utilities and transportation costs here in Austin. The great news is that Austin's utility costs are actually 7% below the national average. This can really help balance the higher housing costs too that I'll talk about here in a moment, but it makes Austin much more financially manageable for residents by offsetting those expenses in the other aspects of daily life. On that note, many clients have also asked whether they're able to choose their utility provider to further control those costs. I know in some areas you're able to do that, and it can vary location to location. So in Austin proper, you're actually not able to select your utility provider, but the great news is the cost is far lower than in many other areas throughout the country. In places like Round Rock, just north of Austin, however, you do have the option to select certain providers, but this choice unfortunately isn't available elsewhere in the city. If having that flexibility to choose your utility provider is important to you, then definitely reach out to me for additional information. I would love to help on that front. Before we continue on with some of this great content, I do want to welcome you to the channel or back to the channel. As you can see, I have my dog Dolly here. She wasn't really cooperating while I was trying to film this video, so I figured I would debut her for the first time so she would sit tight. But anyway, I want to welcome you to the channel or back to the channel. My name is Aubrey von Behren. I'm a local real estate broker here in the Austin Metro. And if you're interested in working together, I would absolutely love that. So call, text, email, let's schedule an appointment to talk a little bit more about what you're looking for here in Austin and how I may be able to help. If you're happy with the content that I'm putting together for you, please hit that subscribe button and notification bell and let me know what you think of the video in the comments. I would love to hear your feedback along the way. Moving right along to housing costs, let's first touch on transportation expenses in the Austin area. These actually sit 9% below the national average. So you can see that many of the daily costs that you'll incur are below the national index, really helping offset some of these additional costs that I'm going to cover here shortly. One of the reasons transportation costs do sit below that national index is many thanks to the lower fuel costs here in Texas and specifically the Austin area. Now, the majority of roads in Austin don't actually involve tollways, which is really nice. However, if you do live in more of the suburban areas, specifically those in north and east of Austin, you'll find yourself traveling on certain toll roads just because it's the newer infrastructure and that was the only way to get in and out of some of those new areas. With that being said, though, they're very reasonably priced and you're actually able to get a Texas toll tag for additional savings and automation. It really just helps take the thought out of it and again, provide a slight additional savings for those tollways. Now let's start talking about some of the costs that are actually higher in comparison to other parts of the United States. In Austin proper, healthcare costs are 3% higher than the national average. With that being said, it is very important to note that Austin is actually home to 3 of the top hospitals in Texas. So In exchange, you have access to world-class hospitals and medical facilities, really ensuring that you receive quality healthcare services throughout the greater Austin metro. In many areas too, these medical facilities are also very new due to much of our recent growth throughout the greater Austin area. So again, you have lots of access to really nice healthcare facilities at your fingertips. And in the grand scheme of things, not a huge percentage more, at 3% more than the national average. Now, let's dive into housing costs. Housing costs are generally about 30% of your total expenses, so getting this right is incredibly important. There are also details that you may not necessarily know when it comes to exploring homes and those associated costs, specifically here in the Austin area. So I'm going to break those down for you today. The cost of housing in Austin proper is 15% higher than the national average. So you can see that's quite a bit more, and it's really the talk of the town, affordability here in Austin, specifically related to housing costs. With that being said, there are fantastic opportunities and many options to avoid this 15% gain. Before I share more about that specifically though, I do want to highlight a big reason the cost of housing in general is higher here in the Austin area and parts of Texas, and that also relates a lot to property taxes. As I share more, keep in mind there is no state income tax in Texas, so your overall tax burden is actually quite low in comparison to most areas in the United States. Before I provide some suggestions on how to keep those housing costs as low as possible, I do want to touch a little bit more on tax rates and exactly how they vary throughout the Austin area, because I think it's very important and there are a lot of unknowns associated with that in particular. Now, in Austin, you might be looking at a home that has a very nice sales price associated with it, but little do you know that particular tax rate might actually be 3% versus the lower 2% average for the greater Austin area. And there's a reason behind that. The reason the tax rates in some of those newer, more suburban areas is higher is because the utility infrastructure had to be installed. It started out as purely raw land. The developer had to come in, create a municipal utility district, oftentimes, AKA a MUD, to install water, sewer, and the necessary utilities to that particular development. Instead of assuming the cost, that was then passed on to the taxpayers in the form of bonds and other increased tax rates. So you'll find that in many of these areas, not all, so again, be sure to reach out to me so I can tell you more of those ins and outs, but in many of these newer areas, you may find the higher tax rates specifically in a lot of these newer master plan communities. Now, to take it a step further, it's also really important to note that the tax assessed value on a particular home can vary tremendously, even between the home that's immediately next door to it. And the reason for that is because the county will assess the valuation of each home in particular on an annual basis. So although the tax rate itself may be the same in that particular area or community, the assessed value on a particular residence can vary. This is based on age, condition, and many other factors that are somewhat related. So again, be sure to reach out to me. I know this can be a little bit confusing, and more than anything, it just varies so much around the greater Austin metro. It's really important to have an accurate assessment of these additional expenses prior to beginning your home search. So reach out to me. I know many of these communities like the back of my hand, including access to all of the relevant tax data that you should know before beginning your search. Now, I promised you some suggestions on how to keep those housing costs as low as possible. And what I found is if you actually go to many of the suburbs and surrounding areas outside of that city core or even Austin proper, you can actually keep your housing expenses 5 to 10% below the national average. That's a huge savings. And it's not that you're even sacrificing anything in terms of the home itself. Many of these homes in these brand new communities are really nice. You get much more square footage for the price than you would anywhere in the central Austin vicinity. And many of these newer communities are true master plans where they have built-in amenities such as pools, fitness centers, parks, even lazy rivers. I've seen it all. So again, you're not sacrificing much except location and proximity to downtown, and that's not necessarily for everyone either. So again, if you do want to keep your housing costs a little more affordable, then you should definitely explore some of these other suburbs to the greater Austin area. Be sure to check out my video. I put one out recently regarding the most affordable neighborhoods throughout Greater Austin, where I highlight about 9 to 10 of these spots, and they're all throughout the Austin metro. So there's bound to be one really good spot for you in there. Be sure to check it out. As you can see, Austin offers a ton of affordability in comparison to other cities and states throughout the country. If you do choose to live closer to the city core where the housing costs are a little bit more expensive, you now know that much of that is offset with the lower cost of your day-to-day necessities. If you do take it a step further and start exploring some of those suburban areas and the really nice master plan communities, then you'll keep your cost of living below the national index. So these are all really big reasons that people are continuing to flock to the Austin area. That, in addition to the fantastic quality of life and the beauty that Austin has to offer. Just as a reminder, my name is Aubrey von Behren. I'm a licensed real estate broker here in the Austin area. If you're interested in working together, I would love to hear from you. So call, text, or email, and let's carve out some time to talk a little bit more about your home search here in the Austin area. As always, please hit that like button, subscribe button, and notification bell so you're alerted of each of the new videos that I'll be putting out for you on a weekly basis. And please let me know what you think in the comments of this video and any others. I would absolutely love to hear your feedback. Until next time.